And the rest of us are going to continue in our James series, week 11. So that's kind of cool. And for those of you that need to see this better, there's that there. I'm sorry for my voice. Like we went Friday to Jasmine's soccer game, and it was the last home soccer game for them. And they scored 10-1. I mean, so I had a lot of screaming to do, obviously, because every time they scream, I'd go, go, like the guy does on TV. And so then they put Jasmine up front, and she's normally a defender. And I said, man, if she scores, it was like in the last minute of the game, I go, I'm going to go crazy. I'm taking my shirt off. I'm running around, which I did, which was awesome because she scored. So it was really cool. But my voice kind of suffered. And then yesterday we had the Crane football tournament. From 8 a.m., we were there from 8 to 3 something, and so I was screaming the whole time. So my voice is kind of shot. So anyway, I'm going to kind of try to save it a little bit. But anyway, we're going to be in James, and we're going to talk about something that, honestly, he's already talked about, which is wisdom. And if you'll remember in week 3, I know some of you are like, that was so long ago, right? In week 3, which was like October sometime, he talked about wisdom from above, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And last time we talked about it, very, very practical. And we had this graphic up on the screen. And if you remember, it was in chapter 1, verse 5 through 8 is what we read in week 3. And basically what James says is, he says, if you lack wisdom, ask God for it. Okay? And so we talked about this. We talked about this idea that if you don't have godly wisdom, then you need to ask God. And so we said, let's ask. And how do you ask? You ask in prayer. And you say, God, give me wisdom. Show me how to be wise in this situation. Show me to always be wise, whatever it is that your prayer is. But then not only ask and just expect God to answer, but then do our part as well and look. And so we said we're going to ask for wisdom, and then we're going to look for God to answer our question, our request. And where do we look? We look to the Bible. One of the very first places, if you want to find wisdom, godly wisdom, is to look to the Bible, because God has already spelled out for us wisdom on how to deal with certain situations. That's His word to us. So look to the word first. Then next, look to your spiritual leaders, to pastors that are in your life. Come to me if, I'm not going to be honest all your questions, but look to those people that are spiritual leaders in your life. Maybe you have a spiritual mentor, someone that's a bit older than you, a little bit further down the road than you are, an accountability partner, someone like that can help you see the wise choice that you need to make. I told you that I've got spiritual mentors as well. I've got the state staff that I go and train with once a month. I've gone to Georgia and Charles' house a few times to ask them, what do you think about this? Because they've been down the road further than I have. So we need those people in our life. So then the next place is experts. If you've got an aching back, don't go to me to try to get wisdom on how to fix your back. You need to go to the doctor. He's the expert, right? If you've got a legal issue, don't come to me. Go to a lawyer, right? And so there you can find wisdom in the experts that are around you. And that includes books, okay? That means there might be some books that you need to read to find God's wisdom for a certain situation. And then lastly, your small group. Our prayer is that you have a place where you can be surrounded in prayer. You can be surrounded in those that are walking life with you, that know your situations. And it's amazing what God can do many times with just some of your Christian peers and say, man, this is something we see in your life that you need to do. So James has already talked about all of this for us in chapter 1 in our third week. Today, honestly, we're not getting very practical. He's already done all the practicality work. Today, we're going to talk about the contrast between godly wisdom and worldly wisdom. And you'll see that here in chapter 3. So go ahead and turn there if you haven't. Verse 13, we're going to be in. Starting there, we're going to be through 18. We're going to talk about the difference between worldly wisdom, which he touches on first, and then godly wisdom. And we're going to do a little activity and things like that. But here's how he starts out. So this is just a continuation. He's going to, right in the very beginning, he's going to basically continue what he's already been saying. If you have faith, then show it in your actions. He's going to say here, if you're wise, then your decisions will be wise. You'll make right decisions if you say you're wise. And that's how he starts out in verse 13. It says this, who among you is wise and understanding? And James always does this. This is what he does. He says, so who thinks they're smart? Is what, when he's, and people raise their hand, and then he goes, nah, you're not smart. And then he says, who thinks they have faith? And they raise their hand, and he says, no, you don't have faith. He does this. This is kind of like he does this little fishing thing. And he says, so, who among you is wise and understanding? Let him show by his good behavior, his deeds in the gentleness of wisdom. But if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your heart, do not be arrogant, and so lie against the truth. Verse 15. The next slide there. This wisdom is not that which comes down from above, but is earthly, natural, demonic. I mean, that's a strong word there. I'm going to talk about that. 16. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there is disorder and every evil thing. And then my favorite word in the Bible, which is what? But. You guys all know that. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, reasonable, full of mercy and good fruits, unwavering, without hypocrisy. And the seed, whose fruit is righteousness, is sown in peace by those who make peace. So James spends this time, now he's already told us how to gain wisdom. Now he's telling us this is the type of wisdom. You're trying to be wise? These are the types of things to look out for. Here's worldly wisdom and here's godly wisdom. And he does a very simple compare and contrast. So let's start in verse 13 where he starts. And he asks the question, who among you is wise and understanding? Let him show by his good behavior his deeds in the gentleness of wisdom. The question he's asking you is, and me, is, do you consider yourself wise? Do you consider yourself a wise person? Now, my next question to you, my additional question to you, that if you said, yes, I consider myself to be wise, my next question to you would be, do the people around you consider yourself wise? Consider you wise, right? Because in this case, there needs to be a confirmation of others on who is actually wise and who is not wise. And this plays out in many different scenarios in your life. How many of you have a friend that thinks they can sing but cannot? Okay, some of you, right? You know who they are, right? And they think they are the best singer. They're the next Celine Dion. They put Adele to shame, right? They're singing Hello in the car, and you're like, no, right? You're like, but yeah, goodbye. You're singing goodbye. I'm out of here, right? We all have those people that think they're great singers, and the reality is they suck, right? You don't want anything. You're like, shut up. But my question is, how many of you have told them they're bad singers? Nobody. Okay, Aaron's back. Aaron's mean. Okay, he just likes doing that. But most of us, there are someone needs to tell them that, right? Because they think they're good, but most of you are probably too nice to tell them they're bad, right? How many of you have someone in your life that thinks they're a good driver, but you won't drive with them? Okay, that's another one of those. Some of you are. You like, I'm a good driver. Your spouse is saying, no, they ain't. I've seen them. I don't ride. That's why I got my own car, right? One of you probably has that friend who painted a painting, and you're trying to be nice. You're like, oh, it's so pretty. And she's like, oh, here, put it in your living room. And you're like, oh, my goodness. And then now you have like 6 in your living room because you can't say no, right? This wisdom, this idea of wisdom, this idea of whether you're a good singer or whether you're a good driver, it needs to be confirmed by others, okay? And a lot of us are just too nice to say anything to the person. But hear me, the absence of someone saying you're not good does not mean that you're good, okay? That just means you have nice friends, right? That just means that someone eventually is going to be honest with you and say, dude, don't ever sing again, right? But the absence of someone telling you you're not good or whatever doesn't mean that you're actually good. So just because people aren't coming up to you calling you an idiot, right? Doesn't mean that you're actually wise. It just means maybe you are an idiot and you have nice friends that aren't willing to ruin the relationship. Lack of criticism doesn't mean that you're actually good at something. So wisdom in this case must be confirmed by the people around you, okay? And that's what he's kind of saying here. He's saying, listen, if you are wise, then it's going to show up in your life. You're going to make wise decisions, okay? You're going to do things that are wise. You're going to not do things, okay, because of your wisdom. He's saying it's going to show up in certain areas of your life. And so wisdom is going to come up in our actions. It's going to come up in our decisions. It's going to come up in the things we do. It's going to come up in the things we don't do. And so godly wisdom is one of those things that should be seen by others. Now, James continues, and he continues with this thought, and he brings up first the worldly wisdom. Okay, he says you're going to compare, and we're going to contrast these two things. Speaking first about worldly wisdom. Verse 14, but if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your heart, do not be arrogant and so lie against the truth. This wisdom is not that which comes down from above, but is earthly, natural, demonic. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there is disorder and every evil thing. Look at those words there that he shares. Bitterness, jealousy, selfish ambition. It's arrogant. This is James describing the person where it's all about them, right? It's all about me. It's all about me. This is the world, the whole universe. I am the son of my own universe, right? Like, this is the person that everything revolves around them. Look at those words. Jealousy, bitterness, these things, arrogant, selfish ambition. These are things where the person, it's not about what God wants, it's about what they want, okay? This is what James is saying. And then look at how else he describes this worldly wisdom. He says, and these are some of the words we're going to look at, earthly, it's natural, it's demonic. And that word earthly there, we're going to look at the words that he uses this morning and kind of look at those more specifically. That word earthly is the person that's living for here and now, okay? They don't really have eyes for the future. They don't really think about eternal things. They certainly don't have a heavenly perspective. He's going to compare and contrast these words. Worldly wisdom only cares about what's going on today, my happiness today, what's going to make me happy. Now, a lot of us pursue those things that make us happy. And some of you, just like me, you've thought in your life at one point, man, if I can just get that one thing, whatever it is, I'll be happy, right? For some of you, it was a boyfriend or a girlfriend. If I can just get a girlfriend. And then when you got the girlfriend, it was, if I can just get married, if I can just get a spouse, I'll be happy. It'll fill that void. And some of you, it was children. If I can just have a child, we'll be happy. It'll make all the difference for us. Some of you, it was a car. Like, your car was horrible. If I could just get that car, I'd be so happy. Or maybe some of you was a house. Like, you're living in a dump and you're like, man, if I could just get a roof over our head, it would make me so happy. It would fulfill my desires. Maybe for some of you, it was a Razor XP 1000 Turbo with a black and, no, it's a little too close to home. But you know what I mean? Like, we all have that thing that we think is going to make us happy now. For most of you, some of you are shaking your heads. You know you got that thing and it didn't make you happy. It didn't feel like there was certainly some happiness. I can guarantee you, if one of you decided to drop a Razor XP 1000 in my drive, with the turbo, by the way, in case you're looking, and I want the black and the blue one, in case any of you are like, I should do that for my pastor. I should bless him. I'm not going to say I wouldn't appreciate that, right? It would make me happy, but it's not going to give me the happiness that I'm really looking for in Christ, right? And some of you know that by experience. You pursued something, and that's the person with an earthly perspective, earthly wisdom, worldly wisdom. That's about here and now. It's all that I can do to get whatever I can to make me happy. The natural word there. It says that worldly wisdom is natural. Now, that's the opposite of spiritual, okay? Natural, the person that has a natural perspective only thinks about what's humanly possible, okay? They don't think about the spiritual world. They think about, what can I do? And they're trying to think about how to make a decision. What can I do in the situation? What can humans do in the situation? They rarely, if ever, take into perspective the spiritual part of the world, the supernatural. They think only about what is humanly possible. What can people do? How can they figure it out? They only consider the thoughts of men. The problem is the thoughts of men are evil, right? That the natural man is naturally a rebel. And we want to rebel against what God's wisdom for us is. They rarely do that. And then he takes even a step further. He's kind of going in progression. He's saying it's earthly, it's natural, and then now he says something that's kind of over the top. And he says it is demonic, okay? Which is like natural, just basically says not really have anything to do with God. It's God neutral. Well, here demonic is anti-God, okay? It's against God. It's in opposition to. The Bible says if you are not for God, you are what? You're against him, and that's strong. That's a strong statement from James, which is why I told you last week, if you'll remember, I felt like he was kind of soft whenever he said you're speaking out one side of your mouth and you're two-faced and you're speaking life and death in the same words. And he goes, friends, it shouldn't be that way. To me, I thought it was like kind of weak for him to say that, because here he's like, you're a demon, right? He's saying that kind of wisdom is demonic. And he's going strong here, making a very pointed application to what we do and don't do, to our wisdom, to our worldly wisdom. So James starts out with the worldly wisdom, and then he transitions to godly wisdom, which is our next set of verses. Verse 17, he makes that transition. He's comparing now the worldly wisdom with the godly wisdom, which is what he talks about here. But wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, reasonable, full of mercy and good fruits, unwavering, without hypocrisy. 18, and the seed whose fruit is righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. So I listed all of the words, all of the adjectives that describe godly wisdom. And he says it's first pure. And he elevates pure to be the very first one, and I think there is specific purpose to that. I think he elevated that one for a reason. Pure is an absolute, okay? Absolute contrast to those first words that he used before. Bitterness, arrogance, jealousy, selfishness. Purity, okay, is the positive to those negatives, right? Purity is the opposite of those things. And I'm not talking about sexual purity and things like that. Pure wisdom is the person who's out for God's good, okay? Who's not looking out for themselves. We said this earlier about worldly wisdom. Those people is arrogant, selfish. It's all about me, 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 me. The person that displays pure wisdom would be the person it's all about God, okay? Their motives are pure. Their motives are to see that God's kingdom is fulfilled here on earth. This is a kingdom concept. Not looking out for your own desires, not worrying about what's going to make you happy, but what's going to make others happy. Remember, Jesus says, listen, I didn't come to be served, but to serve. Right? If you want to be first, you need to be last. He said these things that were so countercultural, so unnatural for us to hear. This is pure wisdom. Putting yourself behind someone else. Putting others in front of you. This is what he's trying to say here. It's not about what can you get, but what can you give? This is pure wisdom. This is what he's talking about here. So it's pure. It's peaceable. Now this is in direct contrast to that word that he shared before, disorder. Peace is the opposite of disorder. Peace is the person who's looking out for the good of God, looking out for God's will to be done here. Kingdom concept type stuff. This is very similar to what we just talked about. He's trying to make things well in the world that we live in. Worldly wisdom says claw and fight your way to the top and do whatever you can to the person next to you. It doesn't matter about them. Just do whatever you can in your selfish ambition to get to the top. Peaceable wisdom says, I want to do whatever I can to lift them up. And yeah, I still want a promotion. I still want to do well, but I'm not going to tear down Leanne in order to do well. In fact, the person that's peaceable says, how can we work together to both do well in this job, right? Or on this project or whatever. That's the person that's peaceable. How can I bring others along with me on this journey? Okay? That's the person that has godly wisdom. Not how can I shoo everyone out, how can I compete, be better than, but how can I bring others, peace among others, how can I bring others along with me on this journey? Then he says gentle. That's the third word there. Now, honestly, this word, I didn't know this word until, I knew what gentle was. But not until this week that I started studying this and looking at the Greek, I was surprised. I thought this word was like the word meek that we've talked about before. Meek, gentle, when we're talking about the spiritual, the fruits of the Spirit means like power under control. Gentle means you can have a whole bunch of power, but being gentle with it, being able to control it. Remember I showed you, if you remember, a dude with a forklift. Do you remember that video? And he took the forklift over the little quarter, and he flipped up the quarter, and then he placed the quarter with the forklift on the water bottle. None of you remember that. Did I actually show that here? Okay, some of you saw that. That's gentleness. We're talking that forklift could have crushed that sucker and everyone around. And he was so gentle with it. Doesn't mean weak. Okay? That's what I thought he was talking about here. But it has nothing to do with that. It actually, it's a different word. Look at this word in the Greek. This word here is epiakes. Say that with me. Epiakes. One more time. Epiakes. Now, so you all speak Greek, so it's good. This word is a bit different than that word. It's connected to it, but it's not that word. And in fact, Barclay says that this is, and I have got a quote from him, and I'm going to read this for you because, I went too far. Sorry. This word, he says, is the most untranslatable word in the New Testament, okay, from the Greek. Barclay says this, of all the Greek words in the New Testament, this is the most untranslatable into English, okay? The man who is epiakes is the man who knows when it's actually wrong to apply the strict letter of the law. He knows how to forgive when strict justice gives him perfect right to condemn. Think about that. When you've got your husband or wife dead to rights, like you caught them red-handed, right? And you're like, I got you, sucker, right? And you're just going to like smoke them up the wall and down. Gentleness here is forgiving, even though you've got them like dead to rights. It's like having someone in your sights, right? Like the deer you're hunting. You've got the deer in your sights, perfect condition, and like you don't pull the trigger. It's kind of like that. Let's continue. He knows how to make allowances and when not to stand up upon his own rights. How to temper justice with mercy. Always remembers that there are greater things in the world than rules and regulations. It is impossible to find an English word to translate this quality. That's gentle. This is gentleness in the aspect of wisdom. This is how James is describing it. It's like not holding something over someone's head when you have every right to, right? It's like whenever you have the right to be first in line, saying, I'm going last, right? It's that mentality of having the right to do something, but for peace sake, you don't, right? Maybe your kids, maybe your kids make a real bad boo-boo, right? And you're like, oh, I could smoke these guys right now, right? And you let it go for the sake of peace. This is what James is saying. Godly wisdom is gentle. It's not whole, especially towards unbelievers. Okay? Especially towards unbelievers. So many times we want to hold them to our standard. We cannot hold them to our standard, folks. We can't do that, okay? Your brothers and sisters, these are the people that you need to be gentle with. Let's continue. Reasonable is the next word that he uses there. This word follows epikes because it's related. This is me not being reasonable like, oh, okay, whatever, he's even-mannered. This is willing to listen, okay? Reasonable means you're willing to listen to both sides of an argument, both sides of things. You're willing and you're skilled to know, very similar to epikes, you're skilled in knowing when to yield, when to say, okay, that's enough. This word here, it's important because it's very similar to gentleness. It's being willing and able to listen to an argument, see both sides of the situation, and move forward. Then he goes on, full of mercy and good fruits. Those are connected. Mercy is having compassion for someone that's suffering, okay? And that person may be suffering because of their own doing, right? Because they committed a crime and they're in jail and they did it and they had to pay the Pied Piper or whatever you do. I don't know, because that was stupid. But anyway, they have to pay for their mistakes, right? A lot of mercy has to do with having compassion for that person. And some people are suffering not under any doing of their own. They're just suffering, right? Compassion is mercy is feeling compassion for those people. But then James takes it a step further and says, not only feel bad for them, not only pray for them, but actually help them. That good fruits, like we're called to not only just feel bad for someone that's in a bad situation, but do something to help them out of it, okay? To help them with that suffering. We need to be able to help them. Then he goes on to unwavering, okay? Unwavering means not easily swayed, not easily swayed between the worldly wisdom and the godly wisdom, okay? The person that's unwavering is not going to see the Bible and translate the Bible over here to be able to do the things they want to do, right? And then over here, hold it this way because, okay, I'm gonna do this good over here because the Bible tells me to do good, but then I'm going to kind of change it a little bit. I'm going to ignore that verse. I'm going to do this or that to be able to get away with some stuff, to be able to get away with going to that party or whatever it is. The person that's unwavering is not on the fence. They don't live in both worlds, okay? It's extremely connected to our next word, without hypocrisy. A hypocrite is someone that says one thing and then does another, right? That's kind of very similar to unwavering. Someone that's wavering is kind of staying in both camps, saying they have godly wisdom, but acting like they really have worldly wisdom. The hypocrite, which is what I was for 25 years, okay, I told you that story. I said all the right things, did all the right things, went to church, had all the right answers. But really, Jesus describes a whitewashed tomb with dead men's bones in it. On the outside, I looked good, but on the inside, I was as rotten as could be. Okay? This type of person who says one thing, who looks good on the outside, has the church clothes, has the Ekklesia shirt. Yeah, I'm a part of Ekklesia, right? But then on Monday, they're smoking crack and shooting people. Like that ain't what we want here, right? That's not godly wisdom, right? That's worldly wisdom. Just because you got an Ekklesia shirt, don't mean you're a godly, wise person, okay? It just doesn't add up, okay? And that's what he's saying. He's making some very clear comparisons and contrasts to it. James paints a very vivid picture here for both worldly wisdom and godly wisdom. So here's what I want you to do, and we're going to wrap up in just a minute. Here's what I want you to do, and I know I didn't tell you guys to do this, but if you'll play some music just for a few minutes, I want for you, because I always want for us to make this like ours, right? So I want for you guys over the next few minutes, to summarize in your own words, and maybe work with a partner, someone next to you or whatever, summarize for yourself what is worldly wisdom and what is godly wisdom, okay? In your own words. If you were writing this to someone, to your grandchildren or whatever, and you were trying to tell your grandchildren from a biblical perspective, what does worldly wisdom look like and what does godly wisdom look like, okay? I'm going to give you a couple minutes to do that. I always want to try to, especially on a day like today where there's not like where he's telling you the 8 things to do. I want to make sure that you get it. And obviously you guys get it, okay? We need to see God as a filter, a compass, right? We need to align ourselves with that compass and that direction. Ooh, we're going to align the compass, right? We're going to align ourselves with the compass of God. I want to make sure that you get it, and it sounds like you do, and that's good. And I want for us to try to filter all of our decisions, right, through God's compass of wisdom. I don't know, I'm trying to bring them all together, but anyway, you know what I mean. The point is, okay, worship team, you guys can come forward. The point is that there are, okay, lots and lots and lots of examples of worldly wisdom. I was just talking to someone the other day. I was telling him about when we decided to leave the Border Patrol, to give up $80,000 to take a job in the ministry with $30,000, and like everyone was like, "You're an idiot," right? You know what I mean? That's so stupid. And in the world's eyes, it was, right? But for us, it was the right decision to make. We were following God's direction. We were following His compass. We're trying to align ourselves with it. And so there are plenty of examples where many times godly wisdom that you're trying to follow is going to be seen by those that, are not godly, and honestly, maybe even some that are, okay? They're going to see it as dumb, as you are not making a wise decision, okay? Because many times God's direction for our life is countercultural. It's very different from what someone else would say your direction for your life ought to be. So just realize that, okay? Realize that what we do when we're following God's wisdom in a situation, many times believers and certainly non-believers are going to say, that doesn't make sense, okay? Surround yourself. So where do you look for wisdom? Look for wisdom in the Bible. Look for wisdom in your spiritual leaders. Look for wisdom in experts. And look for wisdom in your small group. You do those things, I think God will lead you wisely down the road that He's got you going. Why don't we pray?